may not be suitable for all audiences.
I heard you got stuck with babysitting duty this year. How'd you manage that?
Art 101 with Mr. Burgher.
Scholars, welcome back to another episode of Art 101 with me, Mr. Burgher. I'm a professional artist and educator, and I attempt to provide you with the very best in art historical content and information. If you like this, make sure that you're interacting, especially subscribe. There's lots of folks that are watching that aren't subscribing, so do me a favor, get down below there and click those buttons to make it happen.
Possibly.
A generation or so ago, it was very typical to see in an art museum the white male perspective being the dominant perspective in the museum. The world has changed, thankfully. But one of the groups that really made this out in the public, that really brought attention to this, were the Guerrilla Girls. Today, we're going to get into the ins and the outs, some of the backstory, the 101, if you will, to this very influential group, the Guerrilla Girls. How did we as a society learn what good art was supposed to look like? Well, way back in the day, the monarchs would tell us peons of the world, this is what good art looks like. And as their subjects, we said, okay, that makes sense. And we fast forward to today's society in the United States. Things are different, but kind of the same. You see, billionaires are the ones that buy the artworks. They're the ones that get it placed into the museums. They're the ones that say, this is the good art, this is what you should be looking at, and we as the frequenters of these museums and galleries say, okay, that makes sense. And people went along with that status quo for years and years and years until we got to about 1984.
More and more billionaire collectors and billionaire art dealers, a few of them, control the art world. They sit on the boards of museums and they have to pay for what the museums want to collect. And they're much more likely to give money for art that they already have. And most of them have the same cookie cutter collections of art that cost the most. There's so many great artists out there. There's too much discrimination.
You've been making women feel bad about themselves since you were invented.
I think you have that the wrong way around.
Picture it, it was New York at the Museum of Modern Art, and there was this big exhibition of 169 works called the International Survey of Painting and Sculpture. Of those 169, only 13 were women, and a very small handful were minority artists. And so a group of folks got together and they said, look, this is not right. We shouldn't be doing this, where the art museums aren't having a full representation of all people. And their argument was pretty solid.
Culture is the story of everyone. And how can you really tell the story of a culture when you don't include all the voices within the culture? Otherwise, it's just the history and the story of power.
So as a collective, they organized themselves into an anonymous group of feminist art activists that stood to become the conscience of the art world. They wanted to promote females, they wanted to promote artists of color, and having equal access and equal representation in the art museums, to have access in the art galleries, to have critics looking and talking about their work. The argument was made, well, it's just the fact that the white guys that were making this artwork are superior, and if you're not in the galleries, your art must not be good enough. Well, that clearly wasn't the case, and so they wanted to bring these facts and really public attention to what was going on in the museum gallery type system. The numbers were the motivating factor. So they began to create, under this new name, the Guerrilla Girls. They began to create posters and information, and literally, like guerrilla warfare, they were going out into the street, going into their own locations, and bringing attention to this cause. They were naming names. They were calling out the galleries and spaces. They were naming the critics that simply didn't want to promote female and minority artists.
What's very good about our image is that when you look at our masks, you think of what we stand for. And we stand for the conscience of the art world. And we feel that there is underrepresentation of women and minorities. And when you see our logo, basically, when you see our face, that's what we stand for, and it's not personal.
I'm not anyone's lady. I'm not even my own lady. I wouldn't do that to myself.
The Guerrilla Girls learned that calling out the BS directly, using specific information, using laughter and humor, actually made change more possible. Their ideas were provocative. Their guerrilla warfare roots moved them in the right direction. Throughout this process, they would run into a lot of roadblocks. They would go to the artists and say, hey, can you talk to your galleries or museums or spaces about including more females and minorities? And the artist would say, hey, look, I can't control what the gallery does. So they go to the gallery and they say, hey, can you fix this? Well, you know what? If the artwork would sell, we would show it, but it doesn't sell. So they go to the collectors, and the collectors would say, look, we can't buy this if it doesn't go into the museums and spaces where we're purchasing the art. And that's not up to us, that's up to the galleries and the spaces. And this becomes this dog chasing its own tail sort of situation.
My father is not a dog!
I know he's not a dog, he's a human being who needs walking.
The organization of the Guerrilla Girls really started in 1985, several months after the 1984 MoMA show. And as they started to really organize, they wanted to work, as I mentioned, with complete anonymity. They believed that the focus should be on the idea of what they're doing, not on the individual artists that are speaking out.
People have tried to find out who we are, but this whole anonymity thing is so delicious, and it's weird in one way because you don't know who we are, but it attracts attention to our cause. So while people do try to find out, they're almost always wrong.
So each individual would change their name to a famous female artist that had passed away to keep the name of that artist alive. They would conceal their identity in a gorilla costume mask, and their membership was very, very private. As a matter of fact, over the years, they've had 60-some artists that have come in and out of the group. Some are very well known, some are not. Some were involved for a long time, some for a very short period of time. It's all kind of different for the individuals that were participating in the Guerrilla Girls, but they certainly drew a lot of attention to their cause, to their message. Side note, guerrilla warfare is a form of warfare where a small group of mobile individuals is going up against a larger, possibly more powerful opponent. And they're able to find success using surprise actions and often with the knowledge of their own home field advantage.
You expect a battle to be fair! A battle will never be fair!
As the consciousness of the art world, we can thank the Guerrilla Girls for trying to make our society recognize exactly what's going on through their posters, through their messaging, through their lectures, and by reaching out to the public in a very real and broad sense. Friends, I hope you appreciate that story as much as I absolutely love being able to bring it to you. Make sure that you're subscribing, liking, sharing, doing all of those things, and I hope you have yourself a great day. We'll see you next time.
Auf Wiedersehen, asshole.